everyone, this is Sayde Heckman at Udall Botanical Gardens. I am the Garden and Arboretum Manager, and today I'm going to talk you guys through how to make wreaths for the fall season using plants in your own garden. So starting off, we have a ton of different materials that we've harvested from the gardens, and what we do is a week prior, before we make the wreaths, we dry everything to make sure that it's nice and shrunken down and the wreath's not going to fall apart when we make it. So one of our favorite materials to use is just a switchgrass. This is actually harvested out of the overlook garden, and it's really good for making the bulk or the base of your wreath. And then as you go along, you can add a lot of color naturally. So we have things like beard's tongue or penstemon, and this is actually the seed pods, which gives you a really cool brownish red color, which is really fun in wreaths. We have Queen's Anlace or wild carrot that we found in the pollinator meadow. And when this is dried, it has a really cool flower seed head. For a little bit of blue and silvery color to the wreaths, we can use plants like Pervoskia or Russian sage. This one's really fun. You would never really think of this, but this is daylily stalks. And they dry really nicely. They're nice and hollow. They have a cool sound, but they add really cool texture to a fall wreath. And these ones are easy to harvest. You just pull them right off the plant. Another one for a purple color. This is a Joe Pye weed harvested out of the overlook garden. You can see it has the flowers still on it. Some of it's going to seed. So you have the purple of the flower buds as well as the flowers. And then the spent flowers are more of a browny purple color. But again, another really cool textural plant for your wreath. Getting to more of the detailed, adding more bright pops of color, these are the things that you'll be looking for. So one of them is Carl Forester grass. It has this really beautiful texture and it gives you more of a yellow beige color in your wreath. So these ones we like to use towards the end of our wreath making process to add some flair. And then lastly, this year in the gardens, we grew tons of different cut flowers, specifically for fall wreath making. So some of the things that you will probably see, you see very often in fresh cut arrangements that you can buy like at the grocery store or from florists. So this is Status, and this year we chose to do a white one because it's harder to find a nice white dried flower for our wreaths. So I'm excited about these. For very bright pops of color, we have a variety of options. We have things like straw flower. So these have actually been drying for a couple of weeks now. Super bright yellow and very fun. We have pumpkin peppers, which are really cute. These have a really long shelf life, so I think they're gonna last really well in wreaths. And something about fall wreaths is you don't have to think too much about it. Just harvest a bunch of things out of your garden, see what it does when it dries, and then you can have really cool wreaths at home as well. Something that we grew hundreds of this year is Gumprinas or globe amaranth. So you can see we have white, we have different types of purples and pinks, and these are really fun for adding pops of color to your wreaths. If you're making a bigger wreath in the gardens, bigger than 30 inches, you can use hydrangea blooms. So this one's been drying for a couple of weeks, a really cool texture. They stay really well. We have some displays that we've used these years after years, and they last really, really well. So once you explore your garden, figure out what you want to take out of it, the next part is finding materials to make the wreath with. So we have a couple of different options that we use here at Udall. We have the double hoop flat frame. So it's just a flat basic frame. You can get these at craft stores or at different florists around town. The one that we love to use in the gardens is the traditional clamp style wreath frame. And I'll show you how to utilize these once we go through the process of making an actual wreath. But these are the two different options. This one is definitely more homeowner friendly because you need special equipment in order to do this one properly. Some of the hand tools that you'll need to utilize are things like floral wire. This will come in handy when you're doing your flat frame. So you'll definitely need floral wire. A good pair of pruners is very important. So you'll need some of those. And then some optional things are needle nose pliers, just for getting wire tight or your crimps tight, as well as wire cutters. We want to try to avoid cutting any wire with pruners because we don't want to damage the blades. So these are the go-to tools. And then if you're really fancy, or if you come out to Udell for a wreath workshop, especially during the Yuletide holiday season, we use a wreath making table. This table is called a no hammer wreath pressing table, and it's what you would use for a crimping frame. So if you want to come over and look at this, I'll show you how this wreath frame is utilized on this table, and then we'll make a wreath together real quick. So what you'll do, you have these two prongs. This is what's going to hold all of your bundles or your wreath material onto the frame. So the frame sits down in this machine like this, and it kind of sits at an angle. So then when you step on a foot pedal that's underneath this table, it's going to crimp these two pieces of wire together, holding your bundle. So real quick, we'll grab some pruners, and I'll show you how to make a bundle, how to install it in your wreath, and then I'll show you some finished products that volunteers made yesterday. So now that we know all the materials that we can harvest out of the gardens, this is the fun part. We get to start to create our bundles that'll make up the bulk of our wreath. So we got our base material, which is that switchgrass that I talked about earlier. And I like a lot of dimension and crazy colors in my wreaths. So I'm actually gonna take some of this beard's tongue, and I'm gonna overlap it over my grasses. And it's always good to have them extra long, because you can always make them shorter if you want. You can never make them longer. So I have my penstemon in here. I really like the texture of the daylily stalks. So I'm gonna put a couple, maybe just one in there. And then we're gonna go over to our wreath table and put this into our frame. So considering this is very long, the trick for these wreath crimping machines is you want to make sure you have enough material that it's not going to fall out of the crimp once you step on the pedal. So what we're going to do, you're going to take your hand and just move it upwards until you have a nice dense handful. We're going to cut everything off the bottom. Like that. Where my thumb is where the crimp is going to go when we press it in the frame. So now we'll take our bundle, put it down in the frame like this. Make sure you have enough room to put your hand on either side so you don't crimp your hand in the frame. And then I'm going to step on this foot pedal under the table, and you're going to watch these crimp. They bypass each other, and then you have your bundle inside the frame, and it's nice and secure. So I mentioned earlier that you have to dry the materials beforehand. They shrink a lot as they start to dry. So if you were to do this with brand new fresh material, you would crimp it, in a couple of weeks it'll dry and it'll just fall apart. So it's very important to dry it. And then what you'll do is you'll repeat that process over and over and over again until you fill all the crimps. And then what you can do is you can adorn it with flowers and things like that. So on the front side of this table, you can see some of the finished products that volunteers made yesterday. And they're really gorgeous. So these are going to be on display around the gardens. You can see lots of different materials were used. We have hydrangeas, grasses. There's actually a northern sea oats in here, which has a really cool seed head. You have the straw flowers, the statice, and then over here you have the proboscias and the Gumprinas, which add really cool pops of color. So hopefully you'll be able to make a wreath at home. Definitely tag us, put hashtags Udell Wreaths, and I want to see what you guys can make at home. Definitely come out to the gardens and see what the volunteers have created for displays during the fall season. And thanks for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed it.